Hi, Natalia. Thank you so much for the introduction. Thank you for saying that we'd save the best till last. What a compliment. I love that. Thank you. So you'll hear a bit from me, and then we'll have a little bit of space for Q&A at the end. But I'd love to just tell you a little bit more about myself, and I suppose why I'm here today talking to you. So when people describe growing up surrounded by the joy of nature, I can't relate. When they explain the ways which their family taught them to nurture and to cherish our natural world, I can't relate. When they describe the heartbreak they felt watching the destruction of nature firsthand, I can't relate. Growing up in the climate generation, I've been asking myself, what is my place here? Why am I here? I stand here as a young person, a working class woman who has had to grow up too quickly. I stand here with and for every young person who has ever been called a snowflake while they plead with their parents to be heard. I stand here with the burden of the climate crisis on my shoulders, the baton of hope and inspiration being thrown at my heart. The decision of not wanting to have children buried deep in my soul, the fear of what my future holds. So how did I get here? I grew up in Blackpool. For those of you that aren't from the UK, it's an incredibly urban environment, but by the seaside. I love the sea. We're at the top of so many leadership boards, just all of the bad ones. We're the most economically deprived, the least educated, and have the worst living environment. I didn't grow up as a carefree child, especially not in my teenage years. I grew up with poor mental health, worrying about money. Growing up in the UK meant that I had never experienced the first-hand effects of the climate crisis. However, I didn't have capacity to worry about it. I grew up with climate privilege without having the privilege to worry about our climate crisis. And yet the natural world was always something that fascinated me. When I was little, my family would visit what I like to call manufactured nature spaces, places where non-native flowers thrived and where grass grew in straight lines. I was always drawn to the wildness and the power that nature held, and I was intrigued with what existed outside of the manicured places that I'd grown up in. So at 18, I managed to break through the ceiling and to study sustainability at university. I was among the first generation in my family to do this, and for a long time, it didn't actually feel like an option for me. Now with it, it felt like my small bubble was suddenly popped. I was able to learn about a brand new world, occupy brand new spaces that I'd never even knew existed. New principles, new ideologies flooded onto me, and I began to learn about life outside of Blackpool. To begin with, we learned about the complexities, the beauty of our planet and our societies, and I began to extend so much love and so much empathy for the world around me. However, what I hadn't anticipated was that this love and my fascination for our natural world would soon move to fear. I started to learn about the scale of our climate and our ecological crisis for the very first time. Now it's difficult to describe the deep and the existential fear, the dread that comes with a lack of security for your future. The feelings of only living for the next 7 years, because that's all the science tells you that you have left. The uncontrollable despair of seeing no action. Now I had days of practicing nothing but hope. The days when I was surrounded by other youth activists doing incredible things all over the world. The days when decision makers invited me into the rooms like this. And there were days of sheer sadness. There were the apocalyptic dreams that I so often experienced. The suicidal ideations invoked by a feeling of wanting to give up and of seeing no progress. Now this isn't just me. Recent research surveying 10,000 young people in 10 countries found that 56% of young people felt that humanity was doomed. And 70% of us had experienced eco-anxiety. At age 21, I was already feeling overwhelmed, powerless, and increasingly desolate. I was speaking to my parents, showing them intangible graphs of the rising frequency of large-scale weather events and I was just pleading with them to believe me. I was going into lectures, being told about the state of our planet, but given no tools to process that information and no space to feel empowered to take action. And after speaking to my classmates, I realised that so many of my peers felt the same. Leaving university, I never felt more eco-anxious. And during my work with business leaders, with policymakers, with those in historic seats of power, the same feelings can be seen in classrooms and in boardrooms alike. I've seen the people in society with the most authority, the most traditional power, grapple with their climate emotions without the knowledge of knowing where to begin. And maybe some of you in this room feel like that. Now, there's two pieces to this puzzle. There's the internal work that we must do, the work which enables us to recognise our climate emotions and instead of being overwhelmed by them, feel passion and a drive to take action. It's important to recognise that being anxious in the face of the climate crisis is a completely healthy response to a crisis. It's what can light the flame in your heart to take action. If anything, it's less healthy to not feel the sense of urgency and the anxiety around this huge crisis. And this internal work is what can shift you from a place of apathy to a place of empowerment. It involves rewriting the stories that both yourself and that society has told you, that you're too small to make a difference, that the system is too broken to create meaningful change. It involves understanding the power. It involves understanding the power in your spheres of influence, the places where you can make real change, beyond looking at individual action. How can you use your power, your sphere of influence, to constructively disrupt the systems that were never built to serve us? It also involves finding power in your skills. An activist doesn't and shouldn't look one way. An activist isn't just me or the young person banner blazing in the street. It's the CEO advocating for climate action in the boardroom. It's the tech innovator understanding their sphere of influence and using tech as a fundamental tool for climate action. Without doing this work and continuing to attempt climate action is like trying to build a house without its foundations. And the second piece to this puzzle is the external work. As I've said, eco-anxiety is a very healthy response to a crisis. However, so often among young people, our eco-anxiety turns to feelings of powerlessness and feelings of overwhelmed, fueled by inaction, by apathy, and a lack of transparency in the face of this crisis. People in historic seats of power have become experts at tuning out of the scientists and the young people that are screaming that we're hurtling towards a cliff. Leaders are still conforming to broken systems and putting red tape in front of decisions that just aren't that complicated. They're making decisions about our future without hearing us. They're playing with my life like it's an inconvenience and trivializing it to a political talking point. And so often the baton of responsibility is handed to me, to my generation. Yet we know that only 26% of us know how we can meaningfully contribute to climate action. We feel powerless. As young people, we will inherit the worst impacts of the climate crisis. And yet we're systematically excluded from the decisions governing our future. I don't feel seen or heard or cared about, or like I deserve to even be here in the first place. And we need the infrastructure which facilitates and enables this, whether it be youth advisory groups, young professional programs made up of the incredible knowledge and talent within your own organisation, or collaborations with young change makers like me. In the past month, my organisation, Force of Nature, have been working with the young professionals within one of the world's biggest fast-moving consumer goods companies, where we ask them to pose solutions to the problems they see within their own organisation's sustainability agendas. And last week, we took these solutions to the entire C-suite, who were so surprised at the incredible wealth of ideas and knowledge that they had been sitting on within their own young professionals. We need people in these historic seats of power, people just like you, to understand that we deserve to be in decision-making rooms, in rooms which govern our future, and that so often we can tell you what we need to survive this crisis. The depth of morality, our passion, our care is the exact reason we should be in the decision-making room, and why we're being excluded from the design of our own future. Now I want to be vulnerable with you. I want you to be vulnerable with yourself and with people that you're not often vulnerable with, young people like me maybe. Our vulnerability isn't a weakness. It's what we can harness to co-design solutions. My hope for the future is that above all else we can be human. Humans connected by joy and empathy and a just world free from fear. I stand here with the hope of our lived experience being heard. Stand here as an ally, a friend, a leader to older generations, for those in historic seats of power. Now, recently a peer asked me what I would be doing if the world wasn't on fire. And I had to think to myself, what would I be doing if the world wasn't on fire? Now, I have the privilege of working for our planet instead of dying under it, but this took me off guard. I haven't imagined a different life for myself in over 10 years. I haven't stopped to think about the opportunity that my future holds in over 10 years. And I haven't allowed myself to imagine a future where I could be doing anything different for fear of an unattainable world. It's my responsibility. It's everyone's responsibility. I just wish that I didn't have to fight so hard to be heard. I wish that I could have become a singer, a baker, an ice cream lady, my very first dream job. And this is the reality that so many young people face. So why am I here? It's a difficult question, but I feel like I finally have the answer. For me, it's the moral obligation I feel to act, fueled by feelings of despair. It's the fear and the resilience which forces me to not only enter the room quietly, but to kick the door down. It's the injustices that I feel which gives me the power to know that I belong in rooms that I've been told that I don't. And it's the hope. It's the hope that I feel which allows me to continue building a future by my own design. So now, imagine you've walked into a room and you notice that someone is missing. Perhaps it's your colleague, it's your peer, it's a guest speaker, but it's someone who is vital to that conversation. It's someone who will be affected by what happens in that room. What do you do? Thank you so much. I'd like to invite Natalia back and maybe we could take some questions if there are any.
Wow, that was so powerful, Phoebe. All right, everyone, we have one question actually, because we're running out of time from the audience for Phoebe. So here we go. Eco-anxiety seems to be more prevalent amongst people who are more aware about the protection of the environment, right? So Phoebe, do you think overemphasis on the ongoing climate change and sustainability agendas are maybe too overemphasized? And also, how do you think the governments and society at large are dealing with this problem of protecting our Earth?
Yeah, it's a really great question. And I think that our climate crisis is not something to be downplayed. It's not something that is being over-egged in the media. It's not something that we should be shying away from or being ignorant to. It's definitely something that currently mainstream media shows in a pretty unproductive way. So we don't regularly see solutions-focused news or solutions-focused policies or anything like that. Quite often it is all about the doom and gloom. And exactly as I said just a moment ago, so often our eco-anxiety, our feelings of anxiety, of fear for the future, they turn into feelings of powerlessness because the media isn't showing us any solutions. The industry leaders aren't creating space for young people to feel empowered to take action and to take real meaningful action. So our feelings tip over into powerlessness. And what happens then is we feel shut down and we have no one that is there to protect our climate and our ecological crisis that is currently happening. So I really don't think that it's being over-egged in any way, shape or form. I think that we can't sugarcoat the issue, but I do think that we need some more solutions-focused media and just in general, more collaboration across society, whether it be from young people, from politicians, from industry leaders, from educators. To solve this crisis, we're going to need more collaboration, and we're going to need more people, more heads working on this together. So I think that that's more of the issue at the minute, rather than how much we're talking about it.
Wonderful, Phoebe. We actually have time for one more question. So looking at the overall disease burden, which includes physical, mental, community health emanating from this climate change effect, which triggers disasters and the psychological effect on people, Phoebe, what do you think could be some of the, I guess, interventions at individual level and the health community, at large, once again, and how would they be framed, and how can we tackle this situation, in the best case to eliminate this in the future, this problem?
It's a great question again, and I'd say there's two parts to this. And the first part is understanding that sometimes you just need space. There are days where I don't want to get out of bed. There are days where I want to do absolutely nothing to do with the climate crisis. I don't want to even think about it. I'll watch films, Christmas films at the minute. There are days where you just need that space. You need space to rest, to recoup, to manage your own well-being. So that, I think, is the first bit, is just recognizing when you do need that space. But then the other piece is all about, as I mentioned before, being able to shift from this space of apathy or overwhelm into a space of feeling empowered. So there are a few elements to this, and one of the biggest is rewriting the stories that the world has told you and the stories that you tell yourself. So you're too small to make a difference. The system's too broken to create meaningful change. So being able to rewrite those stories, into a space where you can say, yes, I am one person, but I am one person with a network of 8 billion people who are all contributing to this as well. The second thing, again, is what I said earlier, which is around figuring out where your skills lie. So where is my sphere of influence? Where can I contribute beyond individual action? So everybody on this call here, they can take individual action, and that's so meaningful. It's definitely a stepping stone to even greater action. But especially the people on this call, they have the spheres of influence to be able to disrupt the systems that were never built to serve us. You have the power to do that, and you have the skills to do that as well. You're incredibly wise, older people than me, so I know that you have the skill set to do that. And I think the final thing is about finding where your passion lies. What is your problem area? So for me, my problem area is youth representation in the climate crisis. And what that enables you to do by finding that one thing that you can contribute to is take the weight and the burden of the entire climate crisis off your shoulders and know I'm contributing to youth representation in the climate crisis, and someone else is going to think about this other thing, and someone else is going to think about this other thing, and all together we're going to create a story and a picture where all of us are contributing to real, meaningful, institutional and systemic change.
Wonderful. Very interesting and very powerful manifesto. And thank you so much, Phoebe, for sharing this very valuable insights.